Thank you for joining us for Sermons on Demand from Friendship Grace Brethren Church. We provide these videos as a way to share the pulpit messages and teachings offered at Friendship Grace Brethren Church. If you find these videos a helpful resource, please drop us a note at info@friendshipgracebrethren.com. Now open your Bibles and get ready to dig into the Word of God. Chapter 3 of the book of Nahum. Nahum. Notice in your text that the genre changes in chapter 3. Chapter 2 is mostly poetic prophecy, and then you have the last verse of chapter 2 is historical, and then a historical narrative, and then right back into poetic prophecy or whatever you want to describe the genre. But notice that it is just a little different. That changes again how we view the words. And it makes it just a little bit looser in our interpretive function. So let's begin with chapter 3, verse 1. Woe to the bloody city, and full of lies and plunder, no end to the prey. I love the word woe. I love it when prophets say woe. Chapter 3 begins with this woe, to signify either death, grief, or doom was just around the corner. Can you imagine Nahum pronouncing to the city of Nineveh, hey, it's about over for you. You're about to get it. He's pronouncing to the city, to the kingdom, to the entire nation of the Assyrians that it's about to come to an end. It was a prophetic warning of certain death. Even by the standards of the day, Assyria was evil and ruthless. It's interesting to me that we have come full circle from that region. That region that Assyria, that Nineveh is in, is exactly where ISIS is headquartered now. And if you were to do some kind of study to look at the most barbaric people in the world today, and there are a lot of barbaric people, ISIS would be right at the top of the list. And Assyria was the same same kind of people. They just as soon cut your head off as look at you. They were barbaric. They killed children. We'll see that in a little bit. It wasn't worth seizing the children when they seized the people of the land, so they just killed the children. If the child wasn't strong enough and old enough to pull a plow or to do some work, they just killed them. I mean, why take them as slaves if you're going to have to feed them and clothe them and all that stuff? Just kill them. That's the way the Assyrians were. And so for them to be called the bloody city is indicative of how evil and ruthless they were. It was filled with treasure, taken in many battles with thousands of lost lives. And it looked like they were a rich people because of all the things they took from all the people that they conquered. Verse 2 and verse 3. The crack of the whip and the rumble of the wheel, galloping horse and bounding chariot, horsemen charging, flashing sword and glittering spear, hosts of slain, heaps of corpses, dead bodies without end, they stumble over the bodies. Can you get the picture? When it happens, the battle is going to be so rough that the chariots are going to stumble and horses are going to stumble because the bodies are piled up. That's pretty bad. I mean, that's pretty ugly. But that's the picture that is being developed for the people of Nineveh. You are going to be conquered so bad that the horses are going to stumble over the bodies laying in the street. Nahum moves to describe the final battle. They'll become rumbling in at the crack of the whip, swords and spears flashing in the light. I just love the picture that's being painted here by Nahum of what the battle will be like. It'll be fierce, it'll be fast, and it will be overwhelming. And of course, we know that that's the way Nineveh actually was taken. Many dead piling up in the street. And all for the countless whorings of the prostitute, graceful and of deadly charms, who betray nations with her whorings and peoples with her charms. What a description for a people, that they've gone a whoring. Of course, that same kind of statement was made about Israel. So Nahum understood what God was telling him to say here. Nahum says the reason for the destruction of Nineveh is the lust that Assyria, represented by Nineveh, had for power. The same lust that a man would have for a prostitute. The ESV seems to miss one of the ways that Assyria and Nineveh maintained control over the people they conquered: sorcery and witchcraft. The ESV translates kesef as charms. The Dictionary of Biblical Languages with Semitic domains defines it as witchcraft, sorcery, and black magic. Go back to verse 4. And all for the countless whorings of the prostitutes, graceful and of deadly charms. ESV kind of makes that pretty weak. Instead of deadly charms, it really should be saying because of their sorcery, because of their witchcraft, because of their occult following, because of their satanic influence. You want to see a people that is full of satanic influence, just pop onto an ISIS website and you're going to see exactly the same thing. Anybody that thinks Islam is anything other than something derived from Satan, they just don't understand what Islam or what the Quran says. And these people are exactly like that. They're just 1,200 years earlier than the founding of Islam. Assyria utilized spells and incantations to gain control over people, as well as to attempt to read the future. It was not uncommon for the Assyrian military, when they conquered a town, to go in and then bring their witches in and their sorcerers in and throw spells over the entire town to keep it under control. And because the people of the day were spiritual enough, they would hear those and they would immediately submit. Same thing has happened in Haiti with voodoo. Voodoo takes a hold of villages because people believe that it will, and then the voodoo witch doctor pronounces a spell, and now the people are mesmerized by that, and they believe voodoo has the power. That's one of the things that the churches being planted in Haiti have to fight, is voodoo priests and priestesses from casting spells on the church. Now, they don't believe that the spell will affect the church, but the people do. And so they have to fight that. And that was exactly what was going on in Assyria. Satan had such a hold on the spiritual world that Assyria played into that very heavily. Any comments on any of that yet?
It's crazy because this stuff is real.
It's absolutely real.
Yeah, I think in our culture we think that it's just make-believe, but I mean it's legitimate.
That doesn't give us a sign of what's to come.
Oh, yeah. And how far are you in Miracles by Texas?
I read all the analysis of, the case for
he talks toward the end of one of his friends, and I can't remember his friend's name, who is one of those rare people that gets a glimpse into the spiritual world. Doesn't necessarily have things affecting him, but he can be in a place and he can see demons and angels. And I wish we could do that every once in a while. I'm glad we can't do it all the time. But I wish we could do it every once in a while so that we would know what's really going on around us. And to me, it is kind of spooky to think about what's going on in the world that we can't see. There are things happening around us all the time.
How does that play into Ephesians 1, where the Lord says that we are His workmanship? Like how does that elevate us, especially like when we start thinking in terms of, like we were talking about in earlier meeting, like the millennial kingdom, and then the new heavens and the new earth, the human's position of authority over angels.
Well, we're not over angels. We will, but we're not now.
No,
He made Jesus to be a little lower than the angels. Made him to be human, so our current rank is lower than angels.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Millennial kingdom.
Okay. There's not a ton of information in the text about that. I'm not really sure how we deal with the spiritual world. The power of Jesus will overcome it all. But in the world that we're in now, we have to rely on Him to overcome those things. We don't have the power. There's in the charismatic world, they think they receive the power to rebuke angels and to rebuke Satan and so forth. But I'm telling you what, Satan can kick your butt. And you only have the power of Jesus. You don't have your own power to overcome them.
In our readings this week, it talks about, having such strong faith, as long as you got that, you could probably surpass any of it.
Right, but that's operating in the power of God, not in our power.
Well, and to speak into that too, so like one of the best NBA basketball player currently is Stephen Curry, and on his shoe, I believe Under Armour is a sponsor, so I know that. But I believe on his shoe they put for him, "I can do all things." Phil 4:13 on the sole of the shoe. Now, that is so misused because people think that like, oh, I can go be the best basketball player through
Right.
Christ. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. So they apply that to their own desires, what they want. But I think what you said is so true because if it's contingent upon faith, then no matter what happens to me, I can do all things because even if it puts me on the streets, homeless, without wife and kids and a job and all that stuff, I still have faith that the Lord's going to carry me through. That's what that means.
Right.
But we abuse that and we manipulate it, we twist it to make it about us and what we want.
Who was this person you said
Golden State Warriors.
that can see things?
Oh, in the book by Eric Metaxas on miracles, he goes through several chapters where he talks about his investigation into miracles occurring. And one of the miracles that he documents, and you'll have to read it. I'm not certain that he's 100% accurate, but one of the miracles that he documents is a friend of his, and I can't remember his name, who at times has glimpses into the spiritual world. The way Metaxas describes that is he can see from inside the box to outside the box, that the spiritual world is outside the box.
How do you document that?
Well, he talked to the guy, and the guy told him, "This is what I saw," and
Okay, well,
and then he writes it down.
Most of the stories that people have told to the taxes
Right.
about experiences that they have had that they believe are miraculous that couldn't have happened any other
Right.
way.
Which doesn't mean that
but don't we have
Right.
Right, and
don't we have gone to him?
we have to run those kind of claims through a really strong filter,
Well, yeah.
right? I mean, because there's
That's what I said at the outset. I'm not sure that he's right on this, but that's one of the things that he claims.
The first few chapters of the book where
Yeah, it was good. I'm glad I listened to it, but
When our brother-in-law was in Brazil, I know I've told this story before, and he came to meet the missionary, and then he came across the guy on the street, and the guy was, I don't know what the guy was, but they were conversing, and the guy told him, I'm not going to attack you because you have an army of angels, or you have an army with you. He was the only one there. So whatever that guy was seeing was an army of angels or whatever. But honestly, my eyes were really awakened, and I know you want to read them, but when you read Peretti's book, he gives you that insight into what is the forces are fighting around the earth, and it's really very interesting.
He lived in the Spiritus, the city was the Spiritus center.
yeah.
Well, and I mean, how often do we hear of missionaries that are in hostile environments? You know, I think I remember hearing similar things like accounts in Africa where it's a city that's overrun by Muslims, and basically the Muslims are I'm not trying to lump all Muslims into this category, but they're raping the women and they're killing the men. But you see they break into a missionary's home and they leave them alone, for whatever reason, because there's that type of thing going on. We just see it.
And Tom Julian who for years was missionary in France and then director of our foreign missions, and he's written a really good book, Three Princes, on spiritual warfare and what goes on in the world. Esther has my copy and is going through it, and it is an interesting thing. I'm glad we don't see it all the time, but when we go back to what Nahum says here, and we see the words used, even though in the ESV it kind of diminishes it, but when we see that he's talking about spiritual warfare, and that was something that was happening at the time, that we need to recognize it's real, and we can't see it. And I'm going to say we most of us will never see it, but some apparently do, and it does impact our world. We just don't know how it impacts our world. We don't know what's going on around us. There could be lots going on around us. Okay, verse 5. Read 5 through 7. Behold, I am against you, declares the Lord of hosts. Let that never be said of us. Behold, I am against you, declares the Lord of hosts, and will lift up your skirts over your face. And I'll make nations look at your nakedness, and kingdoms at your shame. I will throw filth at you, and treat you with contempt, and make you a spectacle. And all who look at you will shrink from you and say, Wasted is Nineveh, who will grieve for her? Where shall I seek comforts for you? Boy, there's a lot in these verses. The phrase, I'll lift your skirt over your face, is the idea of uncovering them, exposing them. It was common in the ancient Near East for a prostitute to be sent out into the street naked as punishment. You want to display yourself to the guys? Fine. Poof, there you go. And they would know that she was a prostitute and would be punished as one. And that's what God was doing to Nineveh. You go into what was it, verse 4, and Nahum calls Nineveh a prostitute, and then verse 5, she is punished like a prostitute. Nineveh was shamed, and because they had shamed many nations. They had gone in and just obliterated nations and had exposed them, and now Nineveh was going to suffer the same fate. To add to the indignity of having their skirt pulled over their head, they had feces and urine thrown on them. The word translated filth is actually a word that refers to anything that is really detestable. And quite frequently it was used to talk about human waste. And so I know in the jail, that was one of the things that that the correctional officers hated the most is a prisoner would throw their feces and urine at them, especially with as many diseases are out there. So you can understand what's being said here. They're having it thrown at them. They've been exposed bare, and then they're lobbing human waste at them, just defiling Nineveh. Nineveh is getting their just rewards for the life that they led. Nineveh will be in ruins, and no one will mourn for it. God asks them a rhetorical question. Where can I even go to find someone to mourn for you? When Nineveh is conquered, where will it be that somebody will mourn? You know, think about ISIS. If our administration actually got serious about taking out ISIS and we took out ISIS, would there be any nation in the world that would mourn over ISIS being gone? Probably not. Maybe Iran, but other than that, probably not. They had treated so many people so badly that when they got theirs, it was okay. Everybody was good with him being gone. Verse 8, are you better than Thebes that sat by the Nile with water around her rampart, a sea, and water her fall? Thebes is a city in what is today Central Egypt, but then was just out of Egypt. It is where the pyramids are and so forth. Luxor is where all the pyramids are, and that's the modern name for ancient Thebes on the Nile, about halfway from the headwaters of the Nile to the output of the Nile and at the Mediterranean. Here's some of the archaeological ruins from Washington Monument from Thebes that still exist, and these were constructed probably 1,000 years earlier than Nahum. So we're looking at 3,500 years old. These structures. Yeah, we can't hardly build something that lasts 35 years, let alone 3,500.
They didn't have cranes. They didn't have patients on ladders to hand that stuff up.
Jewish ladders. Yeah.
How tall is that? I thought I had a picture that showed it from a different perspective, that something we could see there, but yeah, every bit of that. That's right. There's people. See the people down here? So it's huge. Yeah, it's way bigger. But this was the ancient city of Thebes. Thebes was essentially a burial ground. Luxor is where the pyramids are. The pyramids, contrary to what some nut jobs say, were not built to store grain for Joseph. There's a couple of nut jobs running around telling us that. There's just no open space inside the pyramid to store grain. The purpose of the pyramids was to store dead bodies of royalty in Egypt. Assyria had conquered Thebes, a city in Egypt, in 633 BC, and you can see information about that in Jeremiah and Ezekiel. Thebes was in the same location, as I said, modern-day Luxor, 400 miles south of Cairo. Canals and moats were built all around the city and the outskirts, making it a very secure city, completely surrounded by water. Verse 9, Cush was her strength, Egypt too, and without limit, but the Libyans were her helpers. One of the reasons that Thebes had been so powerful and important prior to being taken by Assyria was the support Thebes received from other nations. Nahum mentions Cush, which Thebes was in. Egypt was this region here, and then you had Cush, and then or Cush down here, and Nubia over here. What is today Libya over here, but a different name we'll get to in our text. Yeah. Yeah. So this is the region. You know, the headwater of the Nile is down here, and it flows north. Everybody thinks it flows this way, but it actually flows north to the Mediterranean. And I thought I had a picture of the canals. Well, that's close to it. Completely surrounded by water, making it a very secure city. Oh yeah, yeah. Put is believed to be modern Libya to west of Egypt on the Mediterranean. Verse 10. Yet she became an exile. She went into captivity. Her infants were dashed in pieces at the head of every street. For her honored men, lots were cast, and all her great men were bound in chains. Records recovered from Assyria reflect in detail the conquest of Thebes. Most of the people of Thebes were taken into captivity by Assyria. Children, particularly infants, were not worth the trouble, so they were slaughtered. The slaughter of the children was done in the open, right on the streets where everyone could see. Can you imagine what that would be like, going through a city as grand as this? Look at those columns, and slaughtering kids. And Corey? Yeah, some of it's desert. I don't know. Yeah, it could be. Could be. You know, a lot of these are blocks that they made, or some of them are blocks that they cut. You know, those look like blocks they made. And that looks solid.
I would say Israel is all stone and
Yeah.
mountain. They could have ordered some of them.
Well, all over the place. I don't know.
They must have pretty advanced mathematics and stuff.
One of the greatest mysteries of the region, how the pyramids were built, because there's not any mortar between the stones, so they're pieces are the ceiling is separate pieces, but it's held together in such a way, you know, with arches and stuff, that there's keystones in the top that hold everything in place, and has survived for 3,500 years.
There's tunnels through a lot of them. My brother was in Egypt and we went through one of the pyramids and he said it was
Creepy. Well, that's where they bury dead royalty.
through the narrow tunnels. He said he wondered if he would ever go back. Probably part of the plan.
Well, yeah, could be. Ver- Verse 11. You also will be drunken and you will go into hiding. You will seek a refuge from the enemy. Like a drunk, the people of Nineveh will not know which way to go when the attack comes, and will be seeking a place to hide. Now imagine, when Nineveh was attacked, remember, the Babylonians dammed up the river north of Nineveh. And then when the reservoir was full, they breached the dam and they let it rush down and it washed out the wall. And then the Babylonians just marched over the downed or underneath the downed wall and right into the streets. And the people were so panic stricken, they didn't know which way to go. And so the Babylonians just killed them. Took them into custody and killed a bunch of them because they didn't know what to do. Because they were in a place that couldn't be taken. If you're inside the fort that can't be taken, it'd be kind of like being in the Titanic. Don't worry about the iceberg. We can't be sunk. And then what happens when it goes down? They didn't know what to do. That's exactly the picture of Nineveh when the wall was breached. Remember, these were 14 feet thick walls. I mean, you can beat on that all day long and you're not going to take it down. But if you wash out the soil underneath it with the moving water of the river, then you're going to stand there and you go, oh, how'd that happen? And you don't know what to do.
So from the wall to the second row of lights, 14 feet.
Yeah. That's a thick wall. And unlike the wall in Jerusalem, which was approximately that thick, but it was hollow in the middle and people lived there. This was solid. It was full of dirt. It wasn't that you could break through one wall, open area, and break through another wall. It was solid. Assyria thought that Nineveh never could be taken. That's why they made it their capital. All your fortresses are like fig trees with first ripe figs. If shaken, they fall into the mouth of the eater. Under the attack led by the Babylonians, Nineveh would discover that the trust they placed in their fortress was misplaced, as the fortresses were weak and ineffective. The reference to fig trees is speaking of the first crop of figs in the year. They fall off the tree and are picked up from the ground, an easy harvest. In the same way, protection of Nineveh would fall easily. More poetic literature of saying this is how easy it is for Nineveh to fall, just like shaking the figs off the fig tree. Behold, your troops are women in your midst. The gates of your land are wide open to your enemies. Fire has devoured your bars. Fear would be so strong that fierce Assyrian soldiers would become like frightened women without any defense. The gates of the city would be destroyed by the flood, and there would be nothing to stop the Babylonians from entering the city. There is nothing anybody could do. When the walls fell, they would march in and they wouldn't know what to do because they weren't prepared for an attack inside the city. Why prepare for an attack inside the city when the falls can't wall down, when the walls can't fall down? Yes, it is. Is this decaf? She has done that before. It made a lasting impression on us all. It wasn't funny. It was ugly. It was ugly. Draw water for the siege, strengthen your forts, go into the day, tread the mortar, take hold of the brick mold. Nothing that the troops did would amount to much. The city was defenseless in the wrath of God. They could build more forts, make more bricks to make walls higher and bigger, but in the power of God it was nothing. Nahum seems to again use sarcasm as he tells the Ninevites to show to defend themselves. What's that?
I was telling her it's biblical.
What?
Sarcasm.
Just because Nahum did it doesn't mean it's normative for the way we're to live. Wow.
It's like saying that you should follow what the Bible says and then somebody quotes Judas lamb and hang himself.
See, it's normal. There will the fire devour you, the sword will cut you off. It will devour you like the locust. Multiply yourselves like the locust. Multiply like the grasshopper. You increased your merchants more than the stars of heaven. The locust spreads its wings and flies away. Your princes are like grasshoppers. Your scribes are like clouds of locusts sitting in the fences in the day of cold. When the sun rises, they fly away. No one knows where they are. Fire would eventually come and devour them. People would be killed by the invading army entering the city. Nothing was going to stop them. Nahum tells them to multiply like locusts or grasshoppers so that they have enough to fight to defend themselves. Again, this is poetic prophecy. He's saying even if you could do that, even if you could miraculously duplicate yourself and provide yourselves with an infinite army, it wouldn't be enough to win. You're going against the great Almighty God. Yeah, true. Nineveh had increased its wealth by taking from others, but they were about to be stripped like locusts strip the land. Everything they had taken would be taken from them. Nineveh would also see its nobles and leaders flee in the night. Defenseless and leaderless, they had no hope of surviving. We're going to get through today. Your shepherds are asleep, O king of Assyria, your nobles slumber. Your people are scattered on the mountains with none to gather them. These final words seem to be addressed at Sin-Shar-Ishkan, the king at the time of the defeat of Nineveh in 612, or maybe King Ashurbanipal, Ashurbanipal, who ruled after Sins and tried to keep Assyria together after the fall. Sins was the second to the last king of Assyria, and he ruled from 627 to 612. He was actually the son of Ashurbanipal and might have been the brother of the last king. So that's who Nahum is talking about. The leadership of Assyria was about to fall. They had a long run. They'd had a powerful and mighty kingdom, but they were going to fall. Verse 19, there is no easing your hurt. Your wound is grievous. All who hear the news about you clap their hands over you, for upon whom has not come your increasing evil. The reality is the king had to feel like a great big wound had been inflicted on his kingdom and his city. Remember, the Babylonians were not taking Assyria per se, they were taking Nineveh, the capital. And on taking Nineveh, the capital, the rest of the country fell. They cut off the head of the snake and the snake died. That's the picture here. So great was the wound that Nineveh was a ruin heap, never to be rebuilt. And we know that to be the case. Nineveh was not rebuilt. Matter of fact, Nineveh ceased to even be known about until the 1800s when a sandstorm across the river from Mosul in Iraq revealed some archaeological ruins. And then they were able to move millions of cubic yards of dirt and uncover the city of Nineveh. It had been covered by dirt for 2,500 years, 2,300 years. It had ceased to exist. Wasn't even known about. When the Babylonians took it, they just leveled it. The next couple pages is a chart of prophecies in Nahum and their fulfillment, their historical fulfillments. I included that, thought that might be interesting to read. It was a kind of a cool prophetic chart. Any questions on Nahum? We have 1 minute left. Yay. Oh yeah. The further that we go from being a Christian nation, despite what the left wants us to believe, this nation was founded on Judeo-Christian values. The founders of this nation were more than just deists. The vast majority of them were Christians, and those that weren't true Bible-believing Christians were Bible-believing deists, and they recognized that following God and His Word is the only thing that would make this nation great, and it did. And not following it is going to take us down the opposite path. There is still time for a revival.
Clapping of the hands, reminds me of 9/11. Arab world is clapping.
Yeah.
Our fall, I bet, on that day.
Yep. Not the Arab world. The Muslim world. Different. Because the Muslim world includes Iran. They're not Arabs. They're Persians. It's the Muslim world that hates us, and the Muslim world is a satanic-filled. I posted on Facebook the other day that in Islam you have to die for Allah, but my God died for me. It's a big difference between Islam and biblical Christianity. Franklin Graham said that, by the way. That's not my quote. Yeah. Okay, Lord willing, next week we'll begin in Habakkuk, or Habakkuk, depending on how you want to pronounce it. Snack on a rib. Father, thank you for allowing us to spend some time looking at these Old Testament prophecies and being able to see the fulfillment of what Nahum said would happen. We can see historical record did happen. Thank you for that. Thank you for the assurity of your word, for the comfort of it, and for the challenge of it. Give us a great time in the service to follow, that we might honor you and glorify you as we fellowship together, as we study your word some more, and as we worship you through song. Thank you for loving us in Jesus' name. Thank you for watching or listening to this teaching on demand from Friendship Grace Brethren Church. Please consider sending us an email at info@friendshipgracebrethren.com to let us know how this teaching may have helped you. Please also consider joining us in person at Friendship Grace Brethren Church, located at 10251 Metro Parkway, Suite 116, Fort Myers, Florida, just south of the intersection of Metro and Colonial Boulevard. Sunday school begins at 9 and worship service at 10 a.m. We look forward to seeing you in person at Friendship Grace Brethren Church.